Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael. And folks, tonight we're going to go to the core essence of research here. I'm going to dive into that which you can touch, very tangible, and with the environment and research. Folks, tonight I have a fantastic treat for you. I have Jeremy Sanborn, who is a very thorough, on-the-ground researcher. I believe that he does base himself out of the Northeast here, and of course he can enlighten us a little bit on that way. But his specialty is cryptids, and of course you can well imagine the king of cryptids, Bigfoot. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Now, one of the interesting things that I like to think about when we talk about this field is, again, the evidence and how it's garnered. So you bring yourself out into the woods and you're traipsing around, you're setting markers, you're taking tally of what might be out there already. Putting these things together, assimilating them in certain fashions, you can come up with certain theories that you can't by sitting watching YouTube videos or reading books even. So this is why this type of research is so important, to be there at the front lines, and Jeremy Sanborn is a perfect example of that type of research. So without further ado, I'm very excited for this show, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I see your lovely faces in the chat once again, and I will get in there and say hello. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us here, and I do hope you enjoy the show. But without further ado, as we love to say here on YouTube, I'd like to introduce to you Jeremy Sanborn. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for joining us tonight on the show. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Believe me, I met you on Black Lotus Productions. We had a panel back there, I'd say, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And, there were a bunch of us that was discussing different way of cryptozoology and so forth. And one of the things that I love about the channel and also have a little bit of difficulty with is the time constraint given to perhaps the guest who has very thorough examples of things they'd like to share, anecdotal stories, and perhaps even more in the way of evidence. Again, just to be able to do that and talk about it. Sometimes when you have that many people on a panel, it's difficult to get to the very bottom because, again, you're on a time constraint as well. So today I've got you mano a mano, and I'm very excited to get into this conversation with you, Jeremy. But before we go down the line that I think most people are expecting us to, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into cryptozoology as a field, and at what point in your life did you decide, I want to go out into the woods and experience some of this for myself?
Okay, well, as you said, I'm from the Northeast, Massachusetts, actually. And I got into cryptozoology. I've known about Sasquatch and the Loch Ness Monster since as far back as I can remember. When I was a kid, my father had a bookshelf and, a library that consisted of a broad range of books, all these different topics. And some of them are on cryptozoology, ghosts, stuff like that. And so I just remember being a kid and looking at these books and him telling me, that this picture was taken in Scotland, and just thinking that there's a dinosaur swimming around in a lake in, over in Scotland, or that there's this hairy monster creature running around the woods, and it intrigued me right from the start. So I owe him for my my fascination with this. But I actually didn't start actively going out looking for Sasquatch. That was where I started until like 2010, right around there. And growing up, I always went and thought that, Sasquatch was, it was Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon. And I heard a few reports about like Ohio and stuff like that, but nothing really about New England or Massachusetts, especially. And then one day, my dad went and he called me and said that he was on the BFRO website and saw that there was a report from literally like 10 minutes down the road from my house where I was living at the time. And it's a place that you and I have talked about, Monsterland. And so, of course, I had to go check it out. And a guy went and he was with his wife and he came across, well, he heard some vocalizations, like some grunts and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
jokingly said to his wife, "Oh, it's Bigfoot." And on his way back down the trail, he came across 6 human-like footprints. Um, and his story goes that, from what he interpreted from, the tracks and stuff, that it jumped out of the woods and like grabbed a deer and then jumped back in the woods because the deer tracks disappeared. So
Mm-hmm.
me and my brother, we started going up in there, and my brother Ryan, I do a lot of research with, and just started noticing things that I've never noticed before in the woods. I grew up on a small farm in a little town in central Mass, and always running around the woods. I'm an active hunter, hiker, and just started the way, you just see, people call them stick structures or tree structures, and never going and remember seeing them and, just walk around in woods before. And then, as you go and you do your research and stuff, you find out more about these supposed structures, that they could possibly be made by Sasquatch for, there's a lot of different theories on why they do it.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then, you go and you try to debunk these things, maybe, deadfall, or snow brought it down, wind. And then you start going and noticing things like how things are just wedged in and like twist and stuff like that. And so just a lot of strange stuff like that. And then actually coming across prints and stuff. And since then I was hooked. It's just I've been hooked since I was a kid, like I said. But
It's one of those curiosities and fascinations that runs in the blood. You
yeah,
can't sleep without knowing it's there. Now, you brought up an interesting point, believing at some point in your life that, Bigfoot was possibly contained to the Pacific Northwest and in this general region. I have to admit, based on the reports that we were getting in the 90s throughout, and even in the early 2000s, a lot of those reports were coming from the Pacific Northwest or some region that was close by. So
yeah.
when I talked to Long Island Bigfoot, the first thing I said to the guy was, "Wait a minute, Bigfoot in Long Island? This little..." Yeah, he said, "Yep." I said, "Okay." He said, "They're everywhere." At the time, I kind of took that in and said, "Well, I believe that that's probably true. Let's look for some more evidence." And sure enough, as we've gone on, I've spoken to many different people all over the planet who claim that this species, in one form or another, is present within their area. Now, the curious thing is that when we talk about deadfall, we talk about these structures, these X's, we talk about these teepees, we talk about these H formations or 90-degree structures that seem to be artificial or contrived in some way, shape, or form. It's my understanding that this interpretation of the language of the woods, I think originally was really introduced by Colorado Bigfoot. Now, I don't know him personally, but I know many people who have worked with him, and of course, there are many who have taken on some of the techniques and practices that he's introduced, of course, this language of the woods being one of them. When did you find out that this was something more tactical in way of identifying a habitation in way of Bigfoot when you talk about the language of the forest?
Language of the forest. I actually like that. As I said, like you come across things that after spending a lot of time in the woods and coming across things that just, they stick out. You've never seen this before, or at least you don't recall. And then, as I said, I have no reason. I mean, I have no idea why they do this, whether it's territorial, direction wise, or what. We people do a lot of strange things, and we don't know why we do things. So, but I'm not familiar with this Colorado Bigfoot guy there, to be honest
Oh,
with you.
that's fine. I really just brought that up to reference because, again, so many people that I've spoken to have pointed back to him being at least the one who made this sort of thing popular if he didn't sort of come up with this idea himself. So I was curious how far-reaching this was within the field. I didn't think you had a prior knowledge of Colorado Bigfoot, and maybe you did. But if you did, perhaps this was one of the elements that you had picked up from him. But, of course, that's not always the case. But it's okay because you're still talking about the same phenomenon that he had introduced into the field. I mean, how do you look through the woods, taking this walk, and you're seeing some of these structures that you may be able to, at least within your person, identify as something Bigfoot related? How can you discern, even at a quick glance, something that is more natural in the way of deadfall and something that may have been created by something more intelligent?
Yeah, a lot of times it's just a matter of looking up, and you'll be able to see where something broke off, and then you also got to go and take in consideration wind, like or maybe a branch swung down and then hit the ground and then butted up, which things can happen in nature that you wouldn't really expect. But you got to go and take all this into consideration. You can't just go and automatically come to I've been out in the woods with people who automatically they jump to Sasquatch, and that's just not the case. But there have been quite a few that I can't go and write off as a natural occurrence, just because of the complexity of them. Twists.
Can you explain that a little bit? Yeah.
Like
give us a visual.
Okay, like I've come across like wedges where you'll have a bunch of like almost like how a log cabin's built, like you wedge, and then you'll have like an end of something and it'll be twisted, like almost like a corkscrew, like the fibers are all twisted, and what does that? Trees don't just spin around and twist up. Bears don't do that. They don't have thumbs, so. And that's when you go and you do the research on all these other people who look into these tree structures and stuff. These are all common things that they go and attribute to Sasquatch and Sasquatch activity. And so, I mean, I got so many pictures, I could send you those.
I would love to see anything you have in way of photographic evidence, but this certainly brings us on to the next topic, which I think certainly saturates the field of cryptozoology and any exploration therein, and that is this idea of pareidolia. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, I'll briefly explain what pareidolia is. It's basically seeing significance within a specific object based on what you may be looking for. It's honestly, there is a biological component to this, the way the brain familiarizes certain objects in front of us. So, as an example, maybe the face on Mars, okay? Cydonia may be some sort of pareidolia, but again, that one's largely up for debate, but I just use it as an example. What are your thoughts on pareidolia? Because honestly, Jeremy, this is something that I believe plagues the field of cryptozoology, and majority of evidence brought forward encompasses this particular element of pareidolia. What are your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, it's all up, individual interpretation of things. A lot of people see things that I go and I look at and I just don't see what they're talking about. To them it's plain as day. They go and, but it, sorry, I got lost here.
No, you're fine, brother.
It's like I said, individual interpretation on things. Like, when I look at the face on Mars, it sure does look like a face, but is it just a natural rock formation? But I really don't have an answer for that one, to be honest with you.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I'll tell you this much: when I went out to Montauk in New York, I had stayed in the Pine Barrens with Long Island Bigfoot and Montauk, as strange as you guys had seen in the documentary and many of the following productions that we put together. Now, I've always had my thoughts on pareidolia, and Long Island Bigfoot does put forth some things that I do think and consider these things to be pareidolia. Now, he may have a different story, but he's not always conclusive because, that's the mark of a good researcher. You just stay away from the conclusory unless you are right there and have something tangible, smoking gun in way of evidence. Now, I was out in the field with him late at night. We were coming back from an excursion deep into the woods. And, we had an experience that was out there. There was something following us. I could look over to my right and I saw this very large shadow, going through the woods almost seamlessly through the trees, but it was right on par with me. So as I walked, it was the exact same thing, almost looked like a mirror image. And yet I could see the red eye shine when it turned its head every time I stopped. When I stopped, it stopped, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
This stuck with us for a little while. But long story short, as we were getting closer back to camp, Mike saw something deep within the woods, and he held up the flashlight, had the camera, and he said, "Look, right between those trees, do you see that face?" And I'm looking, and I'm saying, I don't really see it. And he points it out on the camera. He said, "Look, here are the eyes, here's the nose, here's the mouth." And it was hiding, tucked between two trees where the leaves sort of obscured, think Brian Froud here, for those of you who are familiar with his artwork. Very obscured to see the rest of this face, but sure enough, it kind of looked that way. Now, initially, I thought to myself, this is some interesting pareidolia. But as I looked at it, the moment I caught onto this and my brain started to assimilate what I thought was familiar, I watched it fade in front of my eyes. I have never had an experience like that where, I'm out in the woods and I'm seeing something in the way of a possible entity or something along those lines. And yet we still have this idea that it could be our own mind playing tricks on us. And sure enough, this thing fades right in front of me. So, even today, when I look over the field, I'm very skeptical. I have to use that critical thinking when it comes forward.
Mm-hmm.
And again, staying away from the conclusory is usually a good idea. But to present the evidence, we all have our filters, right? We all have our interpretations of what the world is and perhaps what we've known. So somebody who sees a stone that has an alien face in it, somebody else may see a monkey because they have no idea what an alien being could or couldn't look like, never researched that, and they were never introduced to it, so automatically they see a monkey. So again, this is very, very interesting stuff, and it goes back and forth, folks, when you talk about the idea of pareidolia or apophenia, which essentially is, higher grade of that based on mental processes. So, all right, so you are essentially a boots-on-the-ground researcher, which, I'll be honest, we don't have enough of, even today. So, when you go out into the woods, what are some of the preparations that you make to go out on an excursion? Do you use protection to keep yourself in somewhat of a grounded state? I know some people use Reiki, sending this out into the woods as they get there to connect. Some people have stones or power objects. Some people surround themselves with white light just to stay, again, protected. Do you take any precautions, or do you even think it's necessary when approaching this purported species to do anything like that?
No, to be honest with you, if I get the chance to go out, like I went for a hike today, and I've always got my eyes and ears open. But you actually mentioned something a little bit ago about conclusive evidence, and any evidence that I go and I gather, unless I see this creature doing it personally, it's only possibly a Sasquatch. If I find a print, it's a possible print. I didn't see the creature do it, so therefore I can't definitively say it's a Sasquatch. But no, when I go out, I mean, like I love going out after dark because the woods come alive at night, and I'll shut off my lights and just sit there and listen. And most of the time I'm very comfortable. I always got good intentions. I'm not out there, to harm anything, or to I'm just out there to kind of to observe, and I hope I don't send off any like bad vibes.
Well, is it important to consciously have that intention when going into the woods? Or could I just go in there willy-nilly, excited and looking to find this, whatever it might be that I'm looking for? Is it really important to set the stage before you enter it?
Well, you might not want to go in.
At least mentally.
Mentally, you want to go, and I'd say you want to go and stay collected and calm, because you go in there all, excited, and, you might go and work yourself up and see something or even expect something, and something doesn't happen, because it rarely ever does. But no, I mean, as soon as I enter the woods, I'm in a calm state anyways, going in, if I'm having a rough day or something and I go in the woods, I'm completely in my element, and it's soothing to me.
Hmm.
But as far as mental preparation and stuff, to me it's just like going for a walk in the woods.
See, I think some people are already sort of attuned to the frequency, if we were to talk about a range of frequencies that make a culmination in the woods, naturally, I think, again, when you enter in this space, so many people feel a sense of peace, serenity. And I believe that this is, again, in the way of vibration for explanation, you are now balancing out. Essentially, energy does, one of many things, but one predominantly, and that is when you put it in the same space as another energy, immediately they start flying at each other to balance what that energy is. And we can see this even interpersonally when we have relationships with people, or we talk to folks. Somebody comes up to you and you say to them, "Hey, how are you?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm having a tough day. Got a second to listen?" You're like, "Yeah, sure," empathetically. Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, you feel like you need a nap. And
Yeah.
there's a reason for that. The energy is trying to balance, and he's actually borrowing that energy, drawing it right from you. Again, there's nothing malicious about this. This is just something natural. So when you walk into the woods and you're in that state, I think, again, some people can slip into this a bit more naturally than, perhaps somebody else. Now, when you're in the woods and you're walking about and you're looking... Oh, wait, one thing I wanted to say before I get to this here. Let me straddle the paranormal for a moment here with this subject. Many times people go into a paranormal investigation, they get all amped up, they have their expectations, which to me is a very dirty word when it comes to this field. I mean, there's no room for that, really. You can have a hypothesis, but not an expectation, right?
Yeah.
So they get in there, and the idea is that, and of course this is in the realm of conjecture solely, there's the idea that their energy, as high as it may be, as electric as it may be, could affect the surrounding environment and even produce subconsciously some form of what we would consider paranormal activity. Again, this is just theory, but I'm curious if this is applicable in any way to walking into the woods to greet Bigfoot, who may or may not be a flesh and blood creature, may or may not be interdimensional, or may not be both of these things. What are your thoughts, Jeremy?
Well, I do believe that some people are definitely more in tune to paranormal happenings than others. At least it seems so. And that could be all due to energy, or, certain auras that's given off, or vibes, whatever. I really, like I said, I'm just pretty much a boots on the ground guy who goes out and, you know, I don't expect to see anything. Like I said, it rarely ever happens. I mean, when it does, it's incredible. Um, but and some people, if they get all excited and worked up, they can, subconsciously fool themselves into thinking that they did see or experience something paranormal, when really they're just so worked up that, there's something small happens, like they hear a knock or something, and next thing you know, they're just freaking out. And instead of going and trying to go and figure out, all right, well, what was that? What could that have possibly been? And instead of just jumping the gun, and it's automatically paranormal. And that's just because they're, like you said, expecting it, or they're just so excited about it. And, it comes with time too, more experience you get, and the more used to things happening and being out in certain areas and situations, you get, with experience, you get more comfortable.
100%. 100%. The more that you go into this, I think we connect to it on a deeper level. And this is, again, just a natural course when we follow this sort of path. I've spoken to many people who, began in some way to, just with a walk in the woods, and they became interested in the subject. And through years, perhaps decades of following up and going out there, boots on the ground, and this is what they have told me, they have befriended some of these tribes of Bigfoot, not necessarily in the United States, I'll say for the moment here, but, I don't know what relevance that really has, other than, the majority of these people who go into the woods go so far in, they're in there for days on end. And, they've, again, expressed that they have connected with this particular species to the point where They'll be walking through the woods, a juvenile will pop out, jump on their shoulders, and they're walking around with this thing like a prized scarf. I've seen the photos. I'm not allowed to share them, unfortunately. But again, this is just one person's claim, or actually a handful of them, but I'm focusing on one that was submitted to me. Have you ever heard or talked to anybody in the field, a colleague, a constituent of any sort, that claims to have made this type of contact with Bigfoot?
I've gone and, I've heard of a lot of these types of relationships, like there's a guy up in, I believe it's Ontario, who has conversations with him, sees him all the times. I actually was on a expedition one time with somebody who had gone and visited supposed habitation situation where this family kind of, had this relationship going on with this family of Sasquatch. I've never come across it myself. I've never been that lucky. Not lucky enough to go and have a juvenile Sasquatch jump on me and hang on to me like a backpack. I wish.
Quite literally.
I don't know. It must be an amazing picture. I'd love to see it, but I understand not being there to go and.
It's something that I will share with you when I see you in person. I can show you those pictures. I can't put them out in any disseminating way.
Totally understand.
And of course, I understand, the person who had provided this and gave me that stipulation, to be able to have them but not show them. His expression was, I don't want people coming in disrupting their habitat. I don't want them to know where we are. And I completely understand that. But, sort of in the opposite defense here, where he is incredibly large. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of acres, to say the least. So, I mean, I understand the caution, but in the same respect, I certainly encourage people to put forward some of this evidence. If you want to remain anonymous, that is absolutely fine. You put forward something that makes us question this and allow us to study your picture, your video, whatever you have, your footprint, your hair sample. I mean, that's another thing. Sorry, just to finish that off, send it to us. Samples from the biological body, okay, insinuating that this at least has a component of flesh and blood. Have you ever held Sasquatch hair or anything beyond, perhaps a cast of a footprint or something along those lines? Or have you heard of anybody who had legitimate biological evidence that maybe sent it into a lab and it disappeared or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually, I knew an individual from up in Vermont who had what could have possibly been scat from one. And also, he said something that he possibly had urine that he collected from a supposed Bigfoot that peed next to his tent one night. I'm not sure if it really was, but he supposedly sent them, I believe it was to the University of Vermont, and never got them back. And had, didn't get any backstory to it or anything. That was years ago. But I've never gone and been fortunate enough to go and check out an actual example of supposed, Bigfoot hair. And as for, as you're saying, it'd be nice if these people who do have, evidence such as this individual you're talking about to share it and, remain anonymous by all means. You don't have to go and put yourself out there. But the whole reason why I do this and why I think this research is important is because if this animal, this creature does exist in, say, like a flesh and blood biological form, then it needs protection because, it's obviously a rare, rare animal, if we're going to call it an animal. It's rare, whatever it is. It's only, cited, very, few and far between. It's not like you're seeing them every day. Well, maybe some people do, I guess. But, it needs to be protected and its habitat needs to be protected on a federal level. There's states that pass laws like Washington, has a law you can't go and kill a Bigfoot.
Yes.
But it needs to be more on a much broader federal level. So, I mean, something this rare and so unique, you destroy its habitation and it's going to be gone. And it could be gone before we even go and discover what it truly is.
And that's certainly something to consider when it comes to the question as to why Bigfoot not make itself more present or apparent. I think, Jeremy, you're sort of hitting this on the head. And, just to kind of expound upon some of the words I hear between yours, we as a species, have this long history of destroying something, especially when we don't understand it, whether it be in the way of disintegration, whether it be in the way of research. Most of what we touch, we do destroy.
Mhm.
Now, I don't think that there are many out there in way of looking at the whole population on Earth that would be ready for an encounter or an integration of Bigfoot into their lives. Because, I think we're going to find that when we do get to that point, if it is in our lifetime, Jeremy, that there is a certain number of different facets about this creature that perhaps was evolved quite intentionally, wherein we took a different turn, maybe became more logical in our explanations and perception of the world. We sort of ignored the intuition, the right brain interpretation quite readily, and yet perhaps an unadulterated species, by and large, not really connecting with too many people, although the Native Americans specifically have many stories about interacting with this creature and yet had a great respect for it, revered it in certain respects as some sort of higher entity, not necessarily a god, but, it was a very great respect for this spirit. We're going to find that there are other elements that we actually possess. Bigfoot itself, as this biological being with multidimensional capabilities, could mirror to us our own potential. Now, again,
Awesome.
it's not just about finding this biological entity. It's the implications that come after we do. It's the same thing with high technology. If the U.S. government and the privatized organizations come out and say, hey, we have metapropulsion, we have anti-gravity technology, we're going to say, yay, great, thanks for telling us. But where did you get that?
Yeah.
And at that point, you can't really flub it. I mean, if you have metapropulsion, it obviously wasn't created in a lab yesterday. And if it was, somebody proved me wrong. But that being said, I think that there's a lot to consider as we move forward. And, of course, without expectation, that's my theory of what we might see, or prediction, I should say. James Spice says, did you know there is legit DNA samples by Dr. Melba Ketchum? Now, James, thank you very much for that comment. I do appreciate it. Number one, I have heard of this particular individual. He has come across the table. I have not gotten a chance to really connect and see what he's put together. But two, if he's got this evidence, where the fuck is it, mate? It should be right in front of all of us as researchers. And if it's just out there for us to grab, great. But we need to integrate this. If he's got something in the way of DNA, and this can be verified, okay, not just hearsay, not just conjecture, not, hey, I'm making a guess, an educated guess. We can see it right in the coding. This is what you claim it to be. Man, I will be right there with you 100%, and I will be tooting that horn high into the heavens to let that bounce off the atmosphere and come back to everybody here to be a little dramatic about it. But
I actually,
yeah,
I corresponded with Melba Ketchum quite a few years back.
Okay.
Yeah, because
How'd that go?
you remember Justin Smea? He supposedly went and shot the female Sasquatch in the juvenile over there in the Sierras in California, and then couldn't go and produce the body afterwards, and all this and that. Well, she supposedly went and got DNA samples from that incident, and they were supposed to be, it was supposed to be subjected to peer reviews, like her papers and stuff, and I never heard much more about it.
And yet, see, that's the exact problem here. That's the issue that we all face. And I was talking about this earlier today with somebody, and I was giving the example of how certain things will come up in the media, and then they surface out, poke their head, and then boop, right back underneath the surf. And this, in my opinion, is done intentionally. That way they can say, yeah, we gave it to you, but you'll never find it. But they did it. They said, well, we can say we gave it to you. What you did with it after that, I don't care. It's out there. Go find it. And that's a big problem, especially for us as researchers. And then, of course, you have academia, on that side, following a certain narrative in way of hushing any sort of real evidence that comes out with this. If you know, and I'm not sure if you do, where did this DNA come from? with Dr. Melba? I mean, was it out of hair? Was it out of fecal samples? Was it out of the blood? Did he take a skin graft? Is there any
It was,
description that you can give us on that?
yeah. I actually saw pictures of it. It was a piece of flesh, hair covered flesh.
Oh.
Because he supposedly he shot two Sasquatch, a juvenile, and he was very, very descriptive about it.
Mm-hmm.
Really like cold blooded. They shot it right in the throat, and you know, and I actually spoke with him too. I went and I was totally against what he did if he did it,
Mm-hmm.
but being a hunter, I went and he's also a hunter, and I kind of worked my way in with that angle
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
spoke with him, and he swore, he's like, I'm like, did you really go and shoot a Bigfoot? And he swore that he did, and told me that his house got robbed and everything afterwards, and all this and
Oh
that.
wow.
But like I said, it was these findings from this DNA study were supposed to be submitted to peer review and stuff, and then it fizzled out. I don't know if it's still ongoing. Like I said, this was years ago, but yeah, they also, I guess, some I think like Matt Moneymaker and them from the BFRO went back to the site of the shooting, and they couldn't find a carcass
Mm-hmm.
from where this guy said it would be, and you know they said that they were out there bear hunting. They were in a pickup truck, all this and that. To me, it sounded more like he was poaching bear.
Mm-hmm.
Get
Mm-hmm.
right down to it, you know. And also, if he went and felt the need to go and shoot these things, why did he go and just dump the bodies and run? Why didn't he go
Right.
and you just went and killed these things? Now you're gonna just leave them to rot. Why did you shoot him? Like, he was just so cold blooded about it, and just like he made himself look an
Mm-hmm.
asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm gonna be making up a story and stuff, I'm not gonna try to make myself look like the biggest douche in the world. I'm gonna try to
True.
go. You know, it's so like I don't know.
Glorify yourself, right?
Yeah, make myself look a little bit better than the cruel asshole that I am for shooting big Bigfoot.
I mean, you would think even in what he had put forth here that I did something with carcasses. Maybe I was worried about reprisal or some sort
Yeah,
of legal action could be taken against me, or I was afraid for people to know that it was me doing this. But nothing like that, huh?
no, nothing.
See, to
Uh,
to me, that's concerning. That's concerning. I mean, those carcasses are somewhere if it actually happened.
yeah,
Um, but then
you know,
again, sorry, go ahead.
scavenge. Animals go and they make quick work of carcasses and stuff. And they drag the bones around, and then you have rodents eating the bones, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, but it wasn't that huge of a time frame where he went back, and looked with this group of people. And plus, he could have at least gone and taken, more, you know, some flesh or something from it, some more hair, taking
Mm-hmm.
something.
I think
So
multiple samples. I mean, you've got an entire body to
yeah,
work with. Why?
pull some, pull
You know.
some teeth.
Yeah. What about pictures? Did you have any photographs of this thing?
No, no.
See, to me, that's bullshit. The first, the first thing I'm doing in this situation like that is I'm pulling out my camera and I'm documenting what's going on. I'm shooting video. I'm shooting film. Whatever the case may be,
Absolutely.
how I can document. That's what I'm gonna do.
Hmm.
So, I understand maybe you're a simplistic hunter. Maybe you live in a minimalistic fashion, but don't tell me you don't have something these days that you could at least take a photograph or a pencil in the car that you could draw a sketch of what you're seeing here. Yeah, it sounds very sloppy in way of the story, and the only thing that I'm kind of confused about here is that Dr. Melba apparently got his DNA sample from this individual, right?
Yes, supposedly.
So that's curious to me. If it did happen, maybe the guy was just, not cognizant of what he was really doing and kind of looked at it like another piece of game. And once it was dead, didn't really think too much beyond that. I mean, there are people who don't put that much thought into certain things that you and I would pore over.
Yeah.
Again, just as a natural course. But, to give the benefit of the doubt, that's the only thing I could think of. Again, if Dr. Melba is the only known person, or at least the only name that's coming up, uh, underneath this whole umbrella of, there's actual evidence, then to me, I mean, what's it built on? The foundation seems a bit shaky. But again, if you can say that this happened, you can corroborate with this DNA, that would be fantastic. And you know what? I will reach out to Dr. Melba, if he's still around. I don't know. How long ago did you speak to him?
It's a
I'm
she.
sorry, she. Ha ha ha! You like that? So sorry. So sorry. Today you got to be careful, man. Got to be
Oh, it
careful.
was it was probably like, yeah, you do. It was probably 9, 10 years ago, at least.
Okay. So it was quite some time ago.
Yeah.
All right, I'll certainly look into that. Now, let me ask you a question because this has always been at the forefront of my curiosity. We've had many snippets out there of, purportedly Bigfoot making noises, whoops, even pounding the chest, knocking on trees, you name it. There's a whole gamut of different anomalous sounds that can be attributed to this particular creature. Now, my theory has always been this in listening to a lot of these. I'm an audio engineer by trade, and I've had a very extensive ear when it comes to understanding frequencies, music, and so forth. So, one of the things that I notice in some of these samples that we have, the sound itself, especially when it's doing whoop, something like this, where it's using its diaphragm and you get the resonance of the chest cavity, when I put it under certain scrutiny, oscillators and so forth, I'm breaking down the frequencies and looking at what's there in a parametric sort of way, I'm noticing that the chest cavity of whatever is making this sound is enormous. Okay, this is not a human being with the chest cavity, making this noise. It would sound exactly like we think it would be, very distinct. And again, there's only a certain set, no matter how heavy set you are, that your body will resonate with
Yeah.
your voice. So, what are your thoughts on some of the auditorial evidence that has been made available to us? And is there anything in way of your thought that can sort of put some proof to what we're hearing, and it's not just something anomalous within the environment, trees creaking far off on some heavy wind, anything explainable?
Well, that's awesome that you have that scientific background with, audio and stuff. I wish I did.
I'll show you, brother. At least in so far as what you're doing, I can give you guidance in about an hour with that, so that you can sit there and analyze sound yourself. So next
I
time
appreciate that.
we talk, man. Yeah, my pleasure, bro.
Um, I've heard things that have literally stopped me in my tracks. Like, I've heard whoops. The first possible vocalizations that I heard were a series of whoops that me and my brother went and heard one day. I forget the year, but it was in January. There was snow on the ground, and they were loud, and they didn't sound super close, but they weren't really far away. But they were loud, and they stopped us instantly. And you know, like I said, there was snow on the ground that day. I thought for sure there had to have been people out there. I ran ahead, looked around the corner, no people, no tracks.
Hmm.
There was a small pond nearby, like a swamp. So, my over analytical mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe ice bubbles are escaping out from underneath the ice.
No, that's good though to think like that.
Yeah, you have to, in order to
Hmm.
to go and be serious about this and try to go and you gotta go and take into consideration all these things that could be happening to try to explain this. You can't just jump to oh, it's Sasquatch, and no, the pond was all slushy, and since then I've heard things that just go and are so loud and like literally just almost blood curdling, I guess you'd say, and um,
Mm.
just nothing I've ever heard before being in the woods, like um, and like weird things too, like you'll hear like me and my brother, we've heard it actually a few times in the same area, and it's around the same time of year too. We've heard it 2 years in a
Hmm.
row, and
That's interesting.
like almost like a screaming howl, and then at the end it'll have like three barred owl hoots. Um, like barred owls don't scream, they don't howl, and then
Neither do
but
Fisher cats.
no, and I've
Not
heard
like
fisher cats and stuff, and
me
even
too.
like a bobcat. If you were to go and hear a bobcat in the middle of the night and you didn't know what it was, you'd think it was a freaking werewolf
Yeah.
just by how they sound.
Yeah. Uh huh.
It's crazy, and you know, uh, the just the how loud it is, and just it's such an unnatural sound that you're not used to hearing. Goes and it, I don't know, it just goes and
How does it
it,
make your body feel? Does your body give a response? And what I,
oh
I
yeah,
mean by that, yeah, we all had frisson at one point in our lives where the hair stands straight up on our bodies. That's what it is called officially, frisson. Um,
Prison.
Sometimes we get this sort of central feeling within our solar plexus, our stomach, that tightens up, like,
Tight.
you get stressed or something bad's about to happen. Do you get any sort of bodily responses when you hear these sounds or have some inclination that something in way of what you're looking for is close by?
Yeah, I've definitely felt the what's it called, the
Frisson.
prison.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. When I was just going and describing like how me and my brother have heard these sounds in the same area. The first time we heard it, we were bow hunting for whitetails, and we were separated. And I wasn't looking for Sasquatch or having anything to really do with Sasquatch, even though I've
Mm-hmm.
always got my eyes and ears open, because I'm a researcher, so that's what I just do when I'm in the woods. But I was actively hunting, and it was actually in between our locations. He was at a clearing, and I was through the woods overlooking a valley, and this thing went off in between us, and it was daylight, and it was freaking loud and almost obnoxious. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I got my bow, and I'm like, oh great, I got that pump, the excitement but fear at the same time. Like,
The
what the hell
adrenaline,
was that?
yeah.
Am I in danger? um and then I start walking towards my brother, and he heard it too. He's licensed to carry in Massachusetts, and he had his 45 in his hand, and he's like, what the hell was that? I don't know what it was, but it's so loud. Like the whoops that I heard weren't in anywhere in comparison to how loud these screams and stuff are. And this
Mm-hmm.
thing, whatever it is, has followed us out this past October when we had the Hunter's Moon. I saw something. I think I told you guys this on the panel that we did, where
Mm-hmm.
I've been sitting there hunting all day. Well, at least all afternoon. Me and my brother, we were sitting on this stone wall because, as you know, from being up in this area, you find a lot of stone walls running through the woods. From old farms and stuff like that back in the day.
Everywhere.
Yeah, they are. They're all over the
Everywhere.
place. Like, you're way out in the woods. Next thing you know, there's a stone wall, and it's like, Jesus. And so sitting on this stone wall, and hunting, you go and like you kind of take a mental picture of the area that you're looking at, so that way, because deer are freaking sneaky, man. You can be looking at
Mm-hmm.
something and you won't know until the deer moves that you're actually looking right at a deer. And so I kind of take these mental pictures of the terrain around me, and mental sight pictures, and been looking at this. There was these three, like maple saplings right in a row, and I was sighting down them, and it started to go and get a little dark, and shadows are getting long, and I see this shape, looked like a perfect head on a set of shoulders, leaning out from it was a dark pine tree, and there was a gap, and then a dark group of pine trees, and I'm like, don't remember seeing that before. And then I was watching it for a good couple minutes, and I kept on telling my brother. He was trying to get behind me to see, but my head was in the way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if this thing moves, I'm gonna shit my pants. And sitting there watching it, and I'm like telling myself, oh, maybe it's just the shadows playing tricks on me, And then, and sure, this thing just went, and I don't remember seeing like legs or anything. It was just like this shape that was leaning out, just morphed and blended into the freaking right across the gap. And then, not 20 seconds later, from further up the valley, came this nice, horrible, screechy, scream, freaking howl sound. And, so we're like, all right, well, hunting's over. So, you know, we stand up and we're like, well, let's hang out for a little bit, because, now we're doing a different type of hunting. Let's go and see if we
Mm-hmm.
hear anything. And so I turned my phone on because that was the only recording device that I had on me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 10 minutes, now it's pretty much completely dark. We ended up walking out of there and didn't hear anything following us parallel, like footsteps that night. Although I've had that experience before. In fact, you described it almost perfectly. It was off to my right. I could hear it
Interesting.
walking. I didn't see it, but I could hear it. And it would stop
See,
whenever
that's
I
funny. I could
stopped.
see it, but I couldn't hear it. It's
Yeah,
just the opposite.
just the opposite. So blend both our little experiences, and it'd be perfect.
There's
But
something accomplished there. Yeah.
so we heard this thing go and let off its weird call a few times, and it wasn't as far back as when we first heard it, so it was definitely kind of keeping with us. And then we got to my brother's truck, and I got the recorder going, and the woods came alive that night because it was a hunter's moon, big full moon, first full moon of uh, fall, I think it is. And coyotes going off, barred owls going off. We even heard a moose bugle that night. But all these things, that some people, they hear coyotes and they flip out. They don't know what the hell it is, because coyotes, it could be just like 2 or 3 of them, and they go and they sound like there's 20 of the damn things.
Yes.
But it's just coyotes, and then being in the woods and getting that experience and getting comfortable with it, that comes with the territory. And so these things we're able to identify, but this thing that we're hearing, I still don't know what the hell it is. And then we're at the truck, and we crossed this old dirt road to get to the truck. Whatever this thing was, it had crossed the road. It was off to our left, and starts going off again, loud enough and close enough that where my brother's like, "All right, screw this, get in the freaking truck." And me, I'm like, no, I'm getting this on. I had the recorder on the bed rail of the truck, and I'm like, no, we're getting it. He said, "Get in the effing truck." I'm like, no. And so I looked on my phone, and it was like 33 minutes and something. I'm like, yes, it's still recording. I got it. We got in the truck, and I'm trying to play it back. And for those couple minutes, it's just white noise. My brother saying "get in the truck" isn't on there. Whatever this thing is going off isn't on there. And that's something that's sometimes associated with the paranormal, like ghosts and stuff like that, messing around with electronics and recording devices and stuff. But I'm not one to go, like, I used to be hardcore flesh and blood biological creature. I was firmly set in that camp. But I've had experiences now over the years that I can't go and explain what the hell happened, because one of the things that happened, I told you about it last time, was something literally stomped right behind me. As I was setting up game cams one night, and startled me enough where I turned around and yelled, "Hey!" thinking that my worst fear, that some weirdos out there in the woods with me. I'll take the Sasquatch and the bears and all the other critters running around, coyotes and stuff, but people just leave me alone.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, dude. You can at least sort of predict. Even Bigfoot, as elusive as it is, you have some sort of way to predict what it may or may not do in relation to you out there. But a human being,
we're just
no
crazy.
idea. Yeah, what these people are capable of. Hey, very quickly, Unidentified S4. Thank you so much for the $9.99 super chat. He says, always excellent show, Dark Hour Paranormal, and I thank you very much for your donation. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And, of course, Frapsat has said, well, thank you for your $5 donation, my good man. He says, does Jeremy ever hunt any other cryptid species in Massachusetts area other than Bigfoot? Now, this is something I was going to get into with you, and I think we'll have to do another show to possibly encapsulate all of this. But with that being said, what do you think, mate? Dogman is usually spotted around Bigfoot, just to say.
Just to say. Well, I do the Lake Champlain stuff, which is in Vermont, in New York, looking for Champ. But also, I do go and keep my eyes out for UFOs. Mostly, though, it has to do, like, I'm a certified scuba diver, so
Cool.
So
More balls than I do when it comes to that, brother.
I love it. It's another thing, it's like how I was saying, going in the woods, it's like my element. Well, as soon as I get on the water or in the water, any stress that I might be feeling is just gone. I'm just,
Huh.
it's just,
It's
like
amazing.
I'll go in the woods at night looking for Sasquatch. I'll go diving in a lake, usually by myself because it seems like nobody's scuba certified around in the area. So,
I don't
and
know
I'll
anybody else other than you.
go looking for a supposed lake monster. But when it comes to like demons and stuff like that, I'm freaking up the biggest pansy. I'm like, we've gone and talked about like some of the paranormal experiences I've had, and like, yeah, that scared the crap out of me. You know,
Well, your paranormal experiences were quite harrowing, if I do recall. I mean, there's reason to kind of turn your head and go, you want to go this way real quick.
yeah,
And sometimes we get into those circumstances, especially when they push us off our balance or show up unexpectedly in some way, shape, or form.
it's always
Uh,
unexpected.
it, it's hard to predict that when it comes to the paranormal, and as much as we'd like to try, I think very few are able to put anything forth that's noteworthy in that respect. Um, Certainly, Jeremy, I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about some of the paranormal experiences you've had because, yes, they are kind of mind blowing. What you were telling us over on Black Lotus Productions, I certainly wanted to go into more detail with. But
Yeah.
with all this in mind, we are reaching the end of the hour tonight, and I would like to give you the chance to tell everybody where they can find you. If you want to be contacted, you can tell them how to do that. And certainly anything that you put out in way of video, in way of film, let us know where we can find this evidence if you've compiled this in one place or another.
Yeah. Well, Facebook page, Mysterious Cryptids of the Land and Depths is a page that I run. I'm also associated with NEBO, New England Bigfoot Organization, Cross Course Cryptozoology. Um, I don't really have my own like YouTube site or podcast or anything yet. That's in the works. So when that happens, I will be sure to let you know, and then you can pass the word. But now besides that, just look me up, Jeremy Sanborn.
Cool. And I'll have links to what he has just mentioned in way of the Facebook page. You guys can go and check him out. And of course, drop him whatever comment that you can in way of correspondence because I'm
Yes,
sure Jeremy would
definitely.
appreciate that. Any feedback. And again, let me just put this out there. This is something I've said many, many times over, and I won't stop saying. We're all in this together, folks. Okay? I'm on this side, he's on this side, but we're all in this universe together, as well as the people in the chat with their curiosities at the forefront. We are all, in one way, shape, or form, doing this research. So please, continue. And certainly don't let anything hold you in the way because what we're doing is actually defining a new paradigm. I know that sounds a little lofty, but it's something that we're all doing collectively and we're creating this new paradigm as we go forward. And as we raise in vibration, folks, I guarantee you, we're going to see more of the likes of Bigfoot. We're going to see more of the likes of Dogman, other cryptids that are out there that may have interdimensional capabilities. And, dare I say, we may even come in direct contact with extraterrestrials as a result in way of the popular consensus of what we'd like to see. All the other purported conspiracies aside. Now, that being said, Jeremy, I'm going to take you off for just a moment. If you can, I'd like you to stick around so I can say my proper goodbyes off camera. I'd like to talk to you very quickly about the documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle that I'm working on this summer. And, of course, this is going to encompass the world of cryptozoology. I think I saw somebody in there in the chat mention the puckwudgies. And, I think Jeremy and I could wax to the death about puckwudgies and some of the other anomalous activity that occurs in the Bridgewater Triangle. Essentially, he's out in these woods. Maybe not every day specifically in that location. There are other locations within Massachusetts. He's mentioning the moniker Monsterland, but this encapsulates a very large area. And of course, he's out there. Guys, he's out there, like Long Island Bigfoot, like Montauk is Strange, like Alex Oyen. He's out there doing this research, so give him your support, folks. At the very least, shoot him a comment, send him an email, tell him you appreciate what he does. All right, Jeremy, I'll see you in the back in just a moment, all right, brother?
All
Thank you
right,
so much.
no problem. Thank you.
Cheerio. See, I love these kind of shows because you get to talk to real people. And I don't insinuate that we're not talking to real people when we have higher caliber guests on, but we get a different side of things. There's a rawness to the experience that's being expressed. And I think in many ways, a lot of us identify a bit easier with that raw experience because that's what we have in our back pocket. Not all of us are intense, serious researchers who go out into the field day after day, time after time, night after night to gather this evidence. And like Jeremy had expressed, more often than not, and it's the same for the paranormal world, it's the same as watching the skies in wave ufology, most of the time, nothing's going to happen. Now, this may deter people, and has, plenty. But, like The Secret, thoughts manifesting, you can't give up too quickly. You gotta stay steadfast in that curiosity, because as you do, what you're doing is allowing the universe to see that this is a path that you wish to forge. And what ends up happening at that point is that the universe will open that path. And guess what? If you're bringing us all along with you, we're all creating this same path. Well, I'll let you do the math and where we're going next. Folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to my super chatters for their generous donations. I very much appreciate it. Of course, Frapsap, Robert Rivas, will be helping me, standing right alongside, sitting Shiva with me on this wonderful documentary that we're putting together. Next week, we have some paranormal investigators coming on from the Bridgewater Triangle. They cover that area exclusively, and we've been in talks, and I am very excited to have them on the show, and more than likely you're going to see some of those faces in the documentary that we put forward. But for the meantime, folks, if you are in the Northeast, brace yourself tonight. Get nice and warm, start the fire, open the oven, whatever you have to do, and snuggle up with that significant other or, your favorite blanket, because we're getting snowed in. Snow's supposed to start around 2 o'clock this morning, go to about, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and it's supposed to be a doozy. So, with that being said, folks, once again, thank you for being here with us tonight. I look forward to seeing you all again next week, and also I'll have Jared Murphy back on next week to discuss the great unconformity and the colonization of Mars, which we completely glossed over last night because we were so in-depth with the auditory phenomenon associated with the pyramids and, the routes that we went down that way. So, of course, it was a fantastic show. I enjoyed it very much, but we have to have him back on to discuss what we originally intended, and we will do that next week. But, I'll let you know that the investigators will be coming on Monday, and I'll let you know when Jared will be on as well. All right, so in the meantime, stay vigilant, stay curious, and stay with your boots on the ground in this beautifully nebulous field that encompasses all under the esoteric umbrella. Folks, we'll see you next time on Dark Hour Paranormal. Ciao.